Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. Wednesday, and running rapidly out of genres I read, we're on to romance. And I thought we could start with a vampire romance. Please don't leave, it's not Twilight. We're instead reading a series called Marked, or rather, House of Night. It is marked as the first book in there. It's by PC and Kirsten Cast, a mother daughter duo who write these uh, as far as romance goes in it. I put a content warning on it. It does get a little saucy throughout. Nothing crazy now, but not for the young ones. Mum and Dad, if you're listening, please click off. And we'll begin at chapter 1. Just when I thought my day couldn't get any worse, I saw the dead guy standing next to my locker. Kyla was talking non-stop in her usual K-babble, and she didn't even notice him at first. Actually, now that I think about it, no one else noticed him until he spoke, which is, tragically, more evidence of my freakish inability to fit in. No, but Zoe, I swear, Heath didn't get that drunk after the game. You really shouldn't be so hard on him. Yeah, I said absently, sure, and then I coughed again. I felt like crap. I must be coming down with what Mr. Wise, my more than slightly insane AP biology teacher, called the teen plague. If I died, it would get me out of geometry test tomorrow, maybe? One could only hope. Zoe, please, are you even listening? I think he only had like 4, I don't know, maybe 6 beers and maybe 3 shots, but that's totally besides the point. He probably wouldn't have even hardly any if your stupid parents hadn't made you go home right after the game. We shared a long-suffering look in total agreement about the latest injustice committed by my mum and the step loser she'd married 3 really long years ago. Then, after barely half a breath break, Kay was back with babbling. Plus, he was celebrating. I mean, we beat Union. Kay shook her shoulders, or shook my shoulder, and put her face close to mine. Hello, your boyfriend. My almost boyfriend, I corrected her, trying my best not to cough on her. Whatever. Heath is our quarterback, so of course he's going to celebrate. It's been like a million years since Broken Arrow beat Union. 16. I'm crappy with math, but Kay's math impairment makes me look like a genius. Again, whatever. The point is, he was happy. You should give the boy a break. The point is, he was wasted for like the 5th time this week. I'm sorry, but I don't want to go out with a guy whose main focus in life has changed from trying to play college football to trying to chug a 6-pack without puking. Not to mention the fact that he's going to get fat from all that beer. I had to pause to cough. I was feeling a little dizzy and forced myself to take slow, deep breaths when the coughing fit was over. Not that Kay Babel noticed. Ew, he's fat. Not the visual I wanted. I managed to ignore the urge to cough. And kissing him is like sucking on alcohol-soaked feet. Kay scrunched up her face. Okay, sick. Too bad he's so hot. I rolled my eyes, not bothering to try to hide my annoyance with her typical shallowness. You're so grumpy when you're sick. Anyway, you've no idea how lost puppy-like Heath looked after you ignored him at lunch. He couldn't even. Then I saw him, the dead guy. Okay, I realized pretty quickly he wasn't technically dead. He was undead, or unhuman, whatever. Scientists said one thing, people said another, but the end result is the same. There was no mistaking what he was. Even if I hadn't felt the power of darkness that radiated from him, there was no frickin' way I could miss his mark. The sapphire blue crescent moon on his forehead and the additional tattooing of intertwining knotwork that framed his equally blue eyes. He was a vampire with a Y. And worse, he was a tracker. Well, crap, he was standing by my locker. Zoe, you are so not listening to me. Then the vampire spoke, and his ceremonial words slicked across the space between us, dangerous and seductive, like blood mixed with melted chocolate. Zoe Montgomery, night has chosen thee, thy death will be thy birth. Night calls to thee, hearken to her sweet voice, your destiny awaits you at the house of night. He lifted one long white finger and pointed at me. As my forehead exploded in pain, Kyla opened her mouth and screamed. When the bright splotches finally cleared from my eyes, I looked up to see Kay's colourless face staring down at me. As usual, I said the first ridiculous thing that came to mind. Kay, your eyes are popping out of your head. It's like a fish. He marked you. Oh, Zoe, you have the outline of that thing on your forehead. Then she pressed a shaking hand against her white lips, unsuccessfully trying to hold back a sob. I sat up and coughed. I had a killer headache, and I rubbed the spot right between my eyebrows. It stung as if a wasp had bit me. Bit me? Radiated pain around my eyes, all the way across my cheekbones. I felt like I might puke. Zoe! Kay was really crying now, and had to speak between wet little hiccups. OMG, that guy was a tracker, a vampire tracker. Kay, I blinked hard, trying to clear the pain from my head. Stop crying. You know I hate it when you cry. I reached out to attempt a comforting pat on her shoulders, and she automatically cringed and moved away from me. I couldn't believe it. She actually cringed, like she was afraid of me. She must have been hurt in my eyes because or she must have seen the hurt in my eyes because she instantly started a string of breathless K-babble. Oh, Zoe, what are we going to do? You can't go to that place. You can't be one of those things. This can't be happening. Who am I supposed to go to all our football games with? I noticed that all during her tirade, she didn't once move any closer to me. I clamped down the sick, hurt feeling inside that threatened to make me burst into tears. My eyes dried instantly. I was good at hiding tears. I should be. I had 3 years to get good at it. It's okay, I'll figure this out. It's probably some bizarre mistake, I lied. I wasn't really thinking. I was just making words come out of my mouth, still grimacing. The pain in my head. I stood up. Looking around, I felt a little measure of relief that Kay and I were the only ones in the math hall. And then I had to choke back what I knew was hysterical laughter. Had I not been a total psycho about the geometry test from hell scheduled for tomorrow, and run back to my locker to get my book so I could attempt to obsessively and pointlessly study tonight, the tracker would have found me standing outside in the front of the school with a majority of 1,300 kids who went to Broken Arrow South Intermediate High School. I waited for my stupid Barbie clone sister, likely to smugly call the big... Right, hold on. That one's a little complicated there. So 1,300 kids who went to Broken Arrow South Intermediate High School, waiting for my stupid Barbie clone sister. For what she liked to call the big yellow limbos. I have a car, but standing around with the less fortunate who have to ride the buses is a time-honoured tradition. Not to mention an excellent way to check out who's hitting on who. As it was, there was only one other kid in the math hall, a tall, thin dork with messed up teeth, which I could, unfortunately, see too much of because he was standing there with his mouth flapping open, staring at me, like I'd just given birth to a litter of flying pigs. I coughed again, this time a really wet, disgusting cough. The dork made a squeaky sound and scuttled from the hall to Mrs. Day's room, clutching a flat board to his bony chest. Guess the chess club had changed its meeting time to Mondays after school. Do vampires play chess? Are there vampire dorks? How about Barbie-like vampire cheerleaders? Did any vampires play in a band? Were there vampire emos with their guy wearing girl pants weirdness? And those awful bangs that cover half their face? Or were they all those freaky goth kids who didn't like to bathe much. Was I going to turn into a goth kid, or worse, an emo? I didn't particularly like wearing black, at least not exclusively, and I wasn't feeling a sudden and unfortunate aversion to soap and water, nor did I have an obsessive desire to change my hairstyle and wear too much eyeliner. All this whirled through my mind, while I felt another little hysterical bubble of laughter trying to escape my throat, and I was almost thankful when it came out a cough instead. Zoe, are you okay? Kyla's voice sounded too high, like someone was pinching her. She'd taken another step from me. I sighed and felt my first sliver of anger. It wasn't like I'd asked for this. Kate and I had been best friends since third grade, and now she was looking at me like I'd turned into a monster. Kyla, it's just me. The same me who I was 2 seconds ago, and 2 hours ago, and 2 days ago. I made a frustrated gesture toward my throbbing head. This doesn't change who I am. Kay's eyes teared up again, but thankfully her cell phone started ringing Madonna's Material Girl. Automatically, she glanced at the caller ID. I could tell by her rabbit in the headlights expression that it was her boyfriend, Jared. Go on, I said in a flat, tired voice. Ride home with him. The look of relief was like a slap in my face. Call me later, she threw over her shoulder and beat a hasty retreat out the side door. I watched her rush across the east lawn to the parking lot. I could see she had her cell phone smashed to her ear, and she was talking in animated little bursts to Jared. I'm sure she was already telling him I was turning into a monster. The problem, of course, was that turning into a monster was the brighter of two choices. Number one, I turn into a vampire, which equals a monster in just about any human's mind. Choice number two, my body rejects the change and I die. Forever. So the good news is, I wouldn't have to take the geometry test tomorrow. The bad news is that I would have to move into the House of Knights private boarding school in Tulsa's Midtown, known by all my friends as the Vampyre Finishing School, where I would spend my next 4 years going through bizarre and unnameable physical changes, as well as the total and permanent life shake-up. And that's only if the whole process didn't kill me. Great. I didn't want to do either. I wanted to attempt to be normal, despite the burden of my mega conservative parents, my troll-like younger brother, and my oh-so-perfect older sister. I wanted to pass geometry. I wanted to keep my grades up, so I could be accepted into the veterinary college at OSU and get out of Broken Arrow, Oklahoma. But most of all, I wanted to fit in, at least at school. Home had become hopeless, so all I had left were my friends and my life away from my family. But now that was being taken away from me too. I rubbed my forehead, then messed with my hair until it semi-covered my eyes and, with any luck, the mark that had appeared above them. Keeping my head ducked down, like I was fascinated with the goo that had somehow formed in my purse, I hurried toward the door that led to the student parking lot. I stopped short of going outside, though through the side-by-side windows, in the institutional-looking doors, I could see Heath. Girls flocked around him, posing, flipping their hair, while guys revved ridiculously big pickup trucks and tried, but mostly failed, to look cool. Doesn't it figure that I would choose that to be attracted to? No, to be fair to myself, I should remember that Heath used to be incredibly sweet. Even now he had his moments, mostly when he bothered to be sober. High-pitched girl giggles flitted to me from the parking lot. Great. Kathy Richer, the biggest hoe in school. She was pretending to smack Heath. Even from where I was standing, it was obvious she thought she was hitting him with some kind of mating ritual. As a result, clueless Heath was standing there grinning. Well, hell, my day wasn't going to get any better. I sat there in my Robin's Egg Blue 1966 VW Bug, right in the middle of them. No, I couldn't go out there. I couldn't walk into the middle of all of them with this thing on my forehead. I'd never be able to be a part of them again. I already knew too well what they'd do. I remembered the last kid a tracker had chosen at SIHS. It happened at the beginning of the school year. The tracker had come before school had started and had targeted the kid as he was walking to his first hour. I didn't see the tracker, but I did see the kid afterwards. For a second, he dropped his books and ran out of the building, the mark glowing on his pale forehead and tears washing down his two white cheeks. I never forgot how crowded the halls had been that morning, how everyone had backed away from him like he'd had the plague as he rushed to escape out the front doors of the school. I had been one of those kids who had backed out of his way and stared, even though I'd felt really sorry for him. I just hadn't wanted to be labelled as that one girl who's friends with those freaks. Sort of ironic now, isn't it? Instead of going to my car, I headed for the nearest restroom, which was, thankfully, empty. There were 3 stalls. Yes, I double-checked each for feet. On one wall were 2 sinks, over which hung 2 medium-sized mirrors. Across from the sinks, the opposite wall was covered with a huge mirror and a ledge below it for holding brushes and makeup and whatnot. I put my purse and my geometry book on the ledge. I took a deep breath and in one motion lifted my head and brushed my hair back. It was like staring into the face of a familiar stranger. You know that person you see in a crowd, you swear you know, but you really don't? Now she was me, the familiar stranger. She had my eyes. They were the same hazel colour. I could never decide if they wanted to be green or brown. But had my eyes ever been that big and round? She had my hair, long, straight, almost dark as my grandma's had been, and hers before that, before it had begun to turn silver. The stranger had my high cheekbones, long, strong nose and wide mouth, more features from my grandma and her Cherokee ancestors. But my face had never been that pale. I'd always been olivish, much darker skinned than anyone else in my family, but maybe that wasn't my skin that was suddenly so white. Maybe I just looked pale in comparison to the darker blue outline of the crescent moon that was perfectly positioned in the middle of my forehead. Or maybe it was the horrid phosphorescent lighting. I hoped it wasn't her. I hoped it was the lightning. Lighting. I stared at the exotic-looking tattoo, mixed with my strong Cherokee features. It seemed to brand me with a mark of wildness, as if I belonged to ancient times when the world was bigger, more barbaric. From this day on in my life, I'd never be the same, and from that moment, just an instant, I forgot about the horror of not belonging. It felt like a shocking burst of pleasure, while deep inside of me the blood of my grandmother's people rejoiced. All right, that's chapter 1. I'll take just a short break before chapter 2. Back in just a minute. All right, back at it, chapter 2. When I figured that enough time had passed for everyone to have left school, I flopped my hair back over my forehead and left the bathroom, hurrying to the doors that led to the student parking lot. Everything seemed all clear. It was just some random kid wearing those seriously unattractive gang wannabe baggy pants, cutting across the far end of the lot, keeping his pants from falling down as he walked, taking it all in his concentration. He wouldn't even notice me. I gritted my teeth against the throbbing pain in my head and bolted out the door, straight for my little bug. The moment I stepped outside, the sun began to batter me. I mean, it wasn't a particularly sunny day. There was plenty of those big puffy clouds that looked pretty in pictures, floating around the sky, semi-blocking the sun, but that didn't matter. I had to squint my eyes painfully and hold my hand up as a make-believe sunblock against even that intermittent light. I guess it was because I was focusing so hard on the pain the ordinary sunlight was causing me that I didn't notice the truck until it squealed to a stop in front of me. "Hey Zoe, didn't you get my message?" Ah, crap, crap, crap. It was Heath. I glanced up, looking at him from between my fingers like I was watching some sort of stupid slasher movie. He was sitting in the open tailgate of his friend Dustin's pickup truck. Over his shoulder, I could see the cab of the truck where Dustin and his brother, Drew, were doing what they were usually doing, wrestling and arguing over who knows what. Stupid boy thing. Thankfully, they ignored me. I glanced up at Heath and sighed. He had a beer in his hand and a goofy grin on his face, momentarily forgetting that I had been marked and destined to become an outcast, blood-sucking monster. I scowled at Heath. "You're drinking at school? Are you crazy?" His little boy grin got bigger. "Yes, I am crazy about you, baby." I shook my head while I turned my back on him, opening the creaky door to my bug and shoving my books back into the passenger seat. "Why aren't you guys at football practice?" I said, still keeping my face angled away from him. I might have skipped a page here. I was like, that sentence makes no sense in context. "Didn't you hear? We got the day off because of the ass kicking we gave Union on Friday." Dustin and Drew, who must have been kind of paying attention to Heath and me after all, did a couple of very oaky woohoo and yeah from the inside of the truck. Uh-huh. No, I must have missed that announcement. I've been busy today, big geometry test tomorrow. I tried to sound normal and nonchalant. Then I coughed and added, "Plus, I'm getting a pretty crappy cold." "So, really, are you pissed or something? Like, did Kyla say some shit at the party? I didn't really cheat on you." "Huh?" Kyla did not say one solitary word about Heath cheating on me. Like a moron, I forgot, okay, temporarily, about my new mark. My head snapped around so I could glare at him. "What did you do, Heath?" "So, me? I wouldn't." But his innocent act and excuses faded into an unattractive, mouth-opened look of shock when he caught sight of my mark. "What the—" he started to say, but I cut him off. "Shh." I jerked my head in the direction of the still clueless Dustin and Drew, who were now singing at the top of their totally tone-deaf lungs to the latest Toby Keith CD. His eyes were still wide with shock, but he lowered his voice. "Is that some kind of makeup thing you're doing for drama class?" "No," I whispered, "it's not." "But you can't be marked. We're going out." "We are not going out." And just like that, my semi-reprieve from coughing ended. I practically doubled over, hacking a nasty, phlegmy cough. "Hey, Zoe," Dustin called from the cab. "You ought to lay off those cigarettes." "Yeah, you sound like you're going to cough up a lung or something," Drew said. "Dude, leave her alone. She don't smoke. She's a vampire." Great, wonderful. Heath, and his totally and complete lack of anything resembling good sense, thought he was actually standing up for me. as he yelled at his friends, who instantly stuck their heads out the open windows to gawk at me like I was some science experiment. Well, shit, so he's a fucking freak, Drew said. Drew's insensitive words made the anger that had been simmering somewhere within my chest ever since Kyla had cringed from me bubble up and boil over. I ignored the pain the sun caused me. I stared straight at Drew, meeting his eyes. Shut the hell up. I've really had a bad day and don't need this crap from you. I paused to look from the now wide-eyed, silent Drew to Dustin and added, or you. And as I kept eye contact with Dustin, I realized something. Something that shocked and weirdly excited me. Dustin looked scared. Really scared. I glared back at Drew. He looked scared too. And then I felt it. A tingling sensation that crawled over my skin and made my new mark burn. Power. I felt power. So, what the fuck? His voice broke my attention and pulled my gaze from the brothers. We're out of here, Dustin said, throwing the truck into gear and stepping on the gas. The pickup lurched forward, causing Heath to lose his balance and slide, with a windmill of arms and flying beer, onto the blacktop of the parking lot. Automatically, I rushed forward. Are you okay? Heath was on his hands and knees. I bent over to help pull him to his feet. Then I smelled it. Something smelled amazing. Hot, sweet, delicious. Was Heath wearing a new cologne? Or one of those weird pheromone things that's meant to attract women, like a big genetically engineered bug zapper? I didn't realize how close I was to him until he stood up, until he stood up straight, and our bodies were almost pressed together. He looked down at me, a big question in his eyes. I didn't back away from him. I should have. I would have before, but not now. Not today. So, he said softly, his voice deep and husky. You smell really good. I couldn't stop myself from saying. My heart was pounding, so loud I could hear its echo in my throbbing temples. Zoe, I've really missed you. We need to get back together. You know I really love you. He reached up to touch my face, and both of us noticed the blood that was smeared on the palm of his hands. Ah, shit, I guess I. His voice closed off when he glanced at my face. I could only imagine what I looked like, with my face all white, my new mark blazing, outlined in sapphire blue, and my eyes staring at the blood on his hands. I couldn't move. I couldn't look away. I want, I whispered. I want. What did I want? I couldn't put it into words. No, that wasn't it. I wouldn't put it into words. I wouldn't say aloud the overwhelming surge of white-hot desire that was trying to drown me. And it wasn't because Heath was standing so near. He'd been close to me before. Hell, we'd been making out for a year. But he'd never made me feel like this. Nothing ever like this. I bit my lip. The pickup truck squealed to a halt, fishtailing beside us. Drew jumped out and grabbed Heath round the waist and jerked him back into the truck. Knock it off, I'm talking to Zoe. Heath tried to struggle against Drew, but the kid was Broken Arrow's senior linebacker, truly ginormous. Dustin reached around them and slammed the door of the truck. Leave him alone, you freak, Drew yelled at me as Dustin floored the truck, and this time they really did speed off. I got into my bug. My hands were shaking so hard, I had to try 3 times before I got the engine started. Just get home. Just get home. I said the words over and over, wrenching coughs as I drove. I wouldn't think about what had just happened. I wouldn't think about what just happened. The drive home took 15 minutes, but seemed to pass in the blink of an eye. Too soon, I was sitting in the driveway, trying to get ready for the scene I knew, sure as lightning follows thunder, was waiting inside for me. Why'd I been so eager to get here? I suppose I hadn't technically been all that eager. I suppose I'd just been escaping from what had happened in the parking lot with Heath. No, I wasn't going to think about that now. And anyway, there was probably some kind of rational explanation for everything. A rational and simple explanation. Dustin, Dustin and Drew were arselers, totally immature beer brains. I hadn't used creepy new power to intimidate them. I'd just been freaked and I'd been marked. That was it. I mean, people were scared of vampires. But I'm not a vampire, I said. Then I coughed. I remember how hypnotically beautiful Heath's blood had been. The rush of desire I'd felt for it, not Heath, but Heath's blood. No, no, no. Blood was not beautiful or desirable. I must be in shock. That's it. I'd had to be it. I was in shock and not thinking clearly. Okay, okay. Absently, I touched my forehead and it had stopped burning. But it felt different. I coughed for the zillionth time. Fine, I wouldn't think about Heath, but I couldn't deny it anymore. I felt different. My skin was ultra sensitive. My chest hurt, even though I'd had my cool Maui Jim glasses on. My eyes kept tearing up painfully. I'm dying, I moaned, and then promptly clamped my lips shut. I might actually be dying. I glanced up at the big brick house that, after 3 years, still didn't feel like home. Get on with it. Just get on with it. At least my sister wouldn't be home yet. Cheerleading practice. Hopefully the troll would be totally hypnotized by his new Delta Force Black Hawk Down video game. Ew. I might have mummed to myself. Maybe she would understand. Maybe she would know what to do. Ah, hell. I was 16 years old. But I suddenly realized that I wanted nothing more than I wanted my mum at that moment. Please let her understand. I whispered a simple prayer to whatever god or goddess might be listening to me. As usual, I went through the garage. I walked down the hall and dumped my geometry book, purse, and backpack on my bed. Then I took a deep and shaky breath and went to find my mum. There she was, in the family room, curled up on the edge of the couch, sipping on a cup of coffee and reading Chicken Soup for the Woman's Soul. I've read that book as well. Don't recommend it. She was looking so normal, but but much like she used to look, except that she used to read exotic romances and actually wear makeup, both things that her new husband didn't allow. What a turd. Mum? Hmm? She didn't look up at me. I swallowed hard. Mama. I used the name I used to call her back in the days before she'd married John. I need your help. I didn't know whether it was the unexpected use of mama or something in my voice that touched an old piece of of momstitution that she still had somewhere deep inside of her. But her eyes lifted immediately from her book, which were soft and filled with concern. What is it, baby? She began. Her words seemed to freeze on her lips as she found the mark on my forehead. Oh, what have you done now? My heart started to hurt again. Mum, I didn't do anything. It just happened to me. Not because of me. It's not my fault. Oh, please, no, she wailed, as if I'd said a word. As if I hadn't said a word. What's your father going to say? I wanted to scream. How the hell would any of us know what my father was going to say? We haven't seen or heard from him for 14 years. But I knew it wouldn't do any good. It always made her mad when I reminded her that John was not my real father. So I tried a different tactic, one I'd given up on 3 years ago. Mama, please, can't you just not tell him? For at least a day or two? Just keep it between the two of us until we, I don't know, get used to it or something? I held my breath. But what would I say? I can't even cover things up with, or I can't even cover the thing up with my makeup. Her lips curled weirdly, and she gave the crescent moon a nervous glance. Mum, I didn't mean I'd stay here while we got used to it. I'd have to go. You know that. I had to pause while a huge cough made my shoulders shake. The tracker marked me. I have to move to the house of night, or I'm going to get sicker and sicker, and then die. I tried to tell her with my eyes. I just couldn't say the actual words. I just want a couple of days before I have to deal with I broke off so I didn't have to say his name, this time purposefully making myself cough, which wasn't that hard. What would I tell your father? I felt a rush of fear at the panic in her voice. Wasn't she the mum? Wasn't she supposed to have the answers instead of the questions? Just tell him I'm spending a couple of days at Kyla's house because we have a big biology project due. I watched Mum's eyes change. The concern faded from them, was replaced by a hardness I recognized all too well. So what you're saying is you want me to lie to him? No, Mum. What I'm saying is I want you, for once, to put what I need before what he wants. I want you to be my mama, to help me pack, drive me to this new school, because I'm scared and sick and don't know if I can do it all myself. I finished in a rush, breathing hard and coughing into my hand. I wasn't aware I had stopped being your mum, she said coldly. She made me feel even more tired than Kyla had. I sighed. I think that's the problem, Mum. You don't care enough to be aware of it. You haven't cared about anything but John since you married him. Her eyes narrowed at me. I don't know how you can be so selfish. Don't you realize all he's done for us? Because of him, I quit my awful job at Dillard's. Because of him, we don't have to worry about the money. We have this big, beautiful house. Because of him, we have security and a bright future. I heard the words so often I could have recited them with her. It was at this point in our non-conversations that I usually apologized and went back to my room. But today I couldn't apologize. Today was different. Everything was different. No, Mother, the truth is that because of him, you haven't paid any attention to your kids for 3 years. Did you know your oldest daughter has turned into a sneaky, spoiled slut who screwed half the football team? Do you know what nasty, bloody video games Kevin keeps hidden from you? No, of course you don't. The two of them act happy and pretend to like John, and the whole damn make-believe family thing. So you smile and pray for them and let them do whatever, and me? You think I'm the bad one because I don't pretend, because I'm honest? You know what? I'm so sick of my life. I'm glad the tracker marked me. They call that Vampyre school the House of Night, but it can't be any darker than this perfect home. Before I could cry or scream, I whirled around and stalked back to my bedroom, slamming the door behind me. I hope they all drown. Through the two thin walls, I could hear her making a hysterical call to John. There was no doubt that he'd rush home to deal with me. The problem. Instead of sitting in the bed and crying like I was tempted to, I emptied the school crap out of my backpack. Like I'd need it where I was going. They probably didn't even have normal classes. They probably had classes like ripping people's throats out 101 and intro to how to see in the dark, whatever. No matter what my mum did or didn't do, I couldn't stay here. I had to leave. So what did I need to take with me? My two favourite pairs of jeans, besides what I had on, a couple of black t-shirts. I mean, what else do vampires wear? Plus, they're slimming. I almost passed on my cute, aqua-coloured sparkly cami. All that black was bound to make me more depressed, so I included it. Then I stuffed tons of bras and thongs and hair and makeup and things into the side pouch. I almost left my stuffed animal, Otis the shish. I couldn't say fish when I was 2. On my pillow, but, well, vampire or not, I didn't think I could sleep very well without him, so I tucked him gently into my damn backpack. I heard a knock on the door, and its voice called me out of my room. What? I yelled, and convulsed in a bout of nasty coughing. Zoe, your mother and I need to speak with you. Great. Clearly they didn't drown. I patted Otis the shish. Otis, this sucks. I squared my shoulders, coughed again, and went to face the enemy. And that's the end of chapter 2. Now, how long's chapter 3? Do we have time? What's that? Oh, that's only a couple of pages. One more chapter. Chapter 3. At first glance, my step-loser, John Heifer, appears to be an okay guy, even normal. Yes, that's really his last name, and sadly, it's also my mum's last name. She's Mrs. Heifer. Can you believe it? When he and my mum started dating, I actually overheard some of my mum's friends call him handsome and charming at first. Of course, now mum has a new group of friends. One's Mr. Handsome, and charming thinks are more appropriate than the group of fun single women she used to hang out with. I never liked him, really. I'm not just saying that because I can't stand him now. From the first day I met him, I saw only one thing: a fake. He fakes being a nice guy, he fakes being a good husband, he even fakes being a good father. He looks like every other dad guy age. Wait, he looks like every other dad age guy. He has dark hair, skinny chicken legs, and's getting a gut. His eyes are like his soul, washed out, cold, brownish colour. I walked into the family room to find him standing by the couch. Mother was crumpled near the end of it, clutching her hand. Her eyes were already red and watery. Great, she was going to play the hurt, hysterical mother. It's an act she does well. John had begun to attempt to skewer me with his eyes, but my mark distracted him. His face twisted in disgust. "Get thee behind me, Satan," he quoted, in what I like to think of as his sermon voice. I sighed. "It's not Satan, it's just me." "Now is not the time for sarcasm, Zoe," Mum said. "I'll handle this, hun," the step loser said, patting her shoulder absently before turning his attention back to me. "I told you your bad behaviour and your attitude problem would catch up with you. I'm not even surprised it happened this soon." I shook my head. I expected this. I really expected this. And still, it was a shock. The entire world knew there was nothing anyone could do to bring on, or not, there was nothing anyone could do to bring on the change. Surely that's not do to bring on the change. Well, whatever. The whole "if you get bit by a vampire, you die and become one" thing is strictly fiction. Scientists have been trying to figure out what causes the sequence of physical events that lead to vampirism for years, hoping that if they figure it out, they could cure it, or at the very least invent a vaccine to fight against it. But so far, no luck. But now John Heifer, my step loser, has suddenly discovered that bad teenage behaviour, specifically my bad behaviour, which mostly consisted of the occasional lie, some pissed off thoughts and smart ass comments directed primarily against my parents, and maybe some semi harmless lust for Ashton Kutcher. Sad to say, he likes older women. Actually brought about this physical reaction in my body. Well, hell, who knew? This wasn't something I caused, I finally managed to say. This wasn't done because of me, it was done to me. Every scientist on the planet agrees that. Scientists are not all knowing. They are not men of God. I just stared at him. He was an elder of the people of faith, a position he was oh so proud of. And it was one of the reasons. Elders, it's not really a position. Well, I mean, you get voted into it. People of faith. It's I think that's a wee schism. I've never heard of it. In any case, it was one of the reasons Mum had been attracted to him, and, on a strictly logical level, I could understand why. Being an elder meant that a man was successful, that he had the right job, a nice house, the perfect family. He was supposed to do the right things and believe the right way. On paper, he should have been a great choice for her new husband and her father. Too bad the paper wouldn't have shown the full story. And now, predictably, he was going to play the elder card and throw God in my face. I bet my cool new Steve Madden flats that it irritated God as much as it annoyed me. I tried again. We studied this in AP biology. It's a physiological reaction that takes place in some teenagers' bodies as their hormone levels rise. I paused, thinking really hard, totally proud of myself for remembering something I learned last semester. In certain people, the hormones trigger something or other in a, I thought harder, remembered. a junk DNA strand, which starts the whole change. I smiled, not really at John, but because I was thrilled by my ability to recall stuff from a unit that we'd been done for months. I knew the smile was a mistake when I saw the familiar clenching of his jaw. God's knowledge surpasses science, and it's blasphemous for you to say otherwise, young lady. I never said scientists are smarter than God. I threw my hands up and tried to stifle a cough. I'm just trying to explain what this thing is to you. I don't need to have anything explained to me by a 16-year-old. Well, he was wearing those really bad pants and that awful shirt. Clearly, he did need some things explained to him by a teenager, but I didn't think this was the right time to mention his unfortunate and obvious fashion impairment. But John, honey, what are we going to do about her? What will the neighbours say? Her face paled more than as she stifled a little sob. What will people say at the meeting on Sunday? He narrowed his eyes when I opened my mouth to answer and interrupted before I could speak. We're going to do what any good family should do. We're going to give this to God. They were sending me to a covenant. Unfortunately, I had to deal with another round of coughing, so he kept right on talking. We're going to call Dr. Asher. He'll know what to do to calm this situation. Wonderful. Fabulous. He's calling our family shrink. The incredibly expressionless man. Perfect. Linda, call Dr. Asher's emergency number, and then I think it would be wise to activate the prayer phone tree. Make sure the other elders know that they're going to gather here. Mum nodded and started to get up, but the words that burst from my mouth made her flop back down on the couch. What? Your answer is to call a shrink who is totally clueless about teenagers? Get all those uptight elders over here? Like they'd even begin to try to understand. No, don't you get it? I have to leave tonight. I coughed a really gut-wrenching sound that hurt my chest. See, this'll just get worse if I don't get around to... I hesitated. Why was it so hard to say vampires? Because it sounded so foreign, so final, and part of me admitted, so fantastic. I have to get to the House of Night. Mum jumped up, and for a second I thought she was actually going to save me. Then John put his arm around her shoulder possessively. She looked up at him, and when she looked back at me, her eyes seemed almost sorry, but her words, typically, reflected only what John would want her to say. Zoe, surely it wouldn't hurt anything if you just spent a night at home. Of course it wouldn't, John said to her. I'm sure Dr. Asher will see the need for the house visit. With him here, she'll be perfectly fine. He patted her shoulder, pretending to be caring, but instead of sweet, he sounded slimy. I looked from him to Mum. They weren't going to let me leave. Not tonight. Maybe not ever. At least, not until I had to be hauled out by the paramedics. I suddenly understood that this wasn't just about this mark and the fact that my life had been totally changed. This was about control. If they let me go, somehow they'd lose. In Mum's case, I like to think she was afraid of losing me. She knew what John didn't, that John, hold on, she knew that what John didn't want to lose. He didn't want to lose his precious authority and the illusion that they were the perfect little family. As Mum had already said, what would the neighbours think? What will people think at the meeting on Sunday? John had to preserve the illusion. It was, and if that meant allowing me to get really, really sick, well, that was the price he was willing to pay. I wasn't willing to pay it, though. I guess it was time I took things into my own hands. After all, they were well manicured. Fine, I said. Call Dr. Asher. Start the prayer phone tree. But do you mind if I lie down before everyone gets here? I coughed again for good measure. Of course not, honey, Mum said, looking obviously relieved. A little rest will probably make you feel better. She then moved away from John's possessive arm. She smiled and then hugged me. Would you like me to get you some NyQuil? No, I'll be fine, I said, clinging to her for just a second, wishing so damn hard. It was 3 years ago, and she was still mine, still on my side. And I took a deep breath and stepped back. I'll be fine, I repeated. She looked at me and nodded, telling me she was sorry the only way she could, with her eyes. I turned away from her and started to retreat to my bedroom. To my back, the step loser said, and why don't you do us all a favour and see if you can find some powder or something to cover your forehead? I didn't even pause. I just kept walking, and I wouldn't cry. I'm going to remember this, I told myself sternly. I'm going to remember how awful they made me feel today. So when I'm scared and alone, and whatever else is happening to me that starts to happen, I'm going to remember nothing can be bad as stuck here. Nothing. End of chapter 4. All right, I'll leave it there for tonight. Thank you for listening. Uh, for the one or two who watch these, um, leave your suggestions. I'm gonna upload these to YouTube, and if there's any categories you want me to read, I'll see what I have. I've got a collection. I will die before I read an autobiography. So apart from that, I'm sure I have something for everything. But see you soon.